So in terms of where we are at this meeting, I have some thoughts planned, and I'll say what that is, and then I think we can go around and see what expectations you all have for this, like if you're okay to go along with it, or if there's something else you want to add or do. So for some of us, when we found this idea that there was a proposal for a quality assurance system for human rights in schools, it seemed like a gold mine because we could just see so many possibilities of how this could be used in order to support the work that is happening in democratic schools in that place, and also to take it to mainstream schools, because it's sort of, if we care about human rights, it doesn't really make sense that we only care about it in democratic schools. We have to care about it everywhere. But then when we kind of talk to people about this, there seems to be well, not as much enthusiasm around it as we hope to have. And in a way, it's good to see this at the stage where it's quite small amongst a few people before we sort of try to go big and publicate it. That it would seem that this is an area that needs to get addressed. Like, people are not familiar with the concept of rights, maybe don't see the point in doing it, etc., etc. So I just prepared a little mapping of why this might be useful for children, why it might be useful for democratic schools, why it might be useful for public schools, etc. It's like a whole bunch of different stakeholders. So just sort of popcorn some ideas in there. So it's not intended to be comprehensive, but if we go through that, I think we will be able to add things to it. And I thought having a sense of what different people might expect out of this would guide us in designing what should be in this, because we know it has to serve these purposes. But before I dive into that, let's go around and see what other suggestions you have for today.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good place to start.
I definitely need ideas how to challenge other views. I just had last week, I had a talk, a forced talk to someone who's probably leading my school next year, if I stay. And he was definitely telling me, we are not having any democracy in this school. I make the decisions, because there must be somebody who makes the decisions. I don't want any groups, because people hide behind group decisions. So we made this nice decision and nobody is reliable, or no, not reliable. I can't remember the English word, sorry. Responsible, now this one. And he hates that, and so somebody has to make the decisions, and he doesn't want to hear anything about democratic whatever in this school. So I need something to challenge that 100%, no matter if he is saying what is going to happen or anyone else, because nobody wants to listen to me. And I just hate that I don't know what you hear about Germany, but democracy is in everybody's mouth at the moment, because they're all so scared that democracy is, like failing because of whatever right-wing whatever. But I don't think it's a right-wing party that is what's destroying democracy. It's especially that children don't ever experience what democracy is. They just learn about it. So I need something and ideas to challenge that without maybe losing my job. Well, in the end, I will lose it happily.
I think following on that, for me, it is mostly about diversifying the arguments to building this case for democratic education, having seen that democratic education is not very clear in the eyes of decision makers in particular, and it takes time to explain it. It takes time to, prove its value and its importance. And I think that, linking it to rights that have been ratified by the bodies these decision makers work in, it's more hearable, readable by them. But I need to have clear this link, and for me this will help on that, among other things, but it's maybe this thing that I'm thinking now. The link on specifically this right on this declaration. This is what we're doing. These are the case studies we want to show, and these are the examples of good practices, etc., etc.
Actually, I was more expecting today to know what you have in mind for this group. And considering the expectations of other participants, I am building a lot of arguments which are not widespread yet. Just reading, like if you think it's just an example of artificial intelligence, I think democracy is a better option than autocracy in terms of ruling the world. So this makes sense. I would need to demonstrate this. But if you read Nexus from Harari, he explains it very well. And all the books you can read about artificial intelligence, they support the same idea that we need a democratic regime. So that's one argument. The second, what I see, what I have experienced here in Luxembourg is governments are scared when we speak of self-determined education. They are scared that the social order will be in danger. So we need to find arguments to show to a politician that social order will not be jeopardized. So that's another idea, because we shouldn't think as individual rights to learn as we need or want to learn, but we have to think collectively. And this bridge between the individual and the collective is not strong enough. So that's one other perspective I see on the subject, which needs to be developed.
Yeah.
And what else? Then from the perspective of rights, it's more philosophical, and there's a lot to say about what is democracy, and what is democracy in terms of ethical principles of rights. And these people need to understand. Once they understand, they are empowered to claim what they think is right for themselves. And that's the experience we made in Luxembourg. When we explain to people, this is your right because it works like this, and the right is saying that and that, they can go to inspection and not be, how can I say, intimidated by inspector telling them how they should teach or learn. You know, so it helps to understand how it works and what it really means. That's what I can share with you from all my readings. It's not my opinion, it's just the opinion of many academicians, and I collected and try to synthesize. That's what I'm trying to do, and what we publish also on our website, but we are advancing, and especially on the concept of dignity, which is really interesting for defending and arguing with people.
I think the points that I've heard are amazingly well. I completely side on them. The only thing I may also propose is I think we also have, and I hate to call it this way, but it's a marketing problem, and it's with not just with governments, and for sure that will be a huge step, but I think with parents and with society, almost every person I talk to that dedicates to democratic education, self-directed education, pre-education, and so on. Their main problem is having very few students or very few people with them in their programs, in their educational centers, in their physical spaces, and so on. And I think I don't know which came first, if the egg or the kitchen. As an anarchist, I think, or the chicken. Sorry, as an anarchist, I think may be an easier path to go through the society instead of through the government. But I understand, the urgency of governments looking this way and saying, okay, this is a solution, and so on. But we also, I think it's very important to make parents, to make society look at us and say, okay, that's what we should strive, right? And so I think educating society in general, it's a topic that we should be very concerned. And just to complement what I've heard, I think that would be my only point.
I think some of these sort of they are in the list that I prepared. Just before going into that list, because I don't know if you had the time to check out some of the things I posted in the wiki page, but usually a quality assurance system is a very top-down operation. Like if you look at ISO certifications and things like that, you do certain things according to a plan, and then somebody will come and inspect you and say, yes, you're good for this year or 5 years or whatever it is, you have this certification, and that's how they assure quality. And there are places where you need a system like that, but that is not how we are visualizing what we are doing. UNICEF has a similar thing in the Rights Respecting School Awards, where again, there is a specific set of criteria to be a bronze school, a silver school, and a gold school. And then there is a process by which somebody inspects or evaluates and says, okay, this year you're a bronze school, this year you're a silver school, and things like that. The key philosophical basis for being different and not being top down is that a core idea in human rights is that the rights holders can defend their rights, can argue for their rights, can say, look, this is my right to protest against the government, and you have to let me protest against the government. You can't just lock me up because I'm saying I don't like the president. Although with the Convention of the Rights of the Child, 1989, children were recognized as being capable of defending their rights, subject to this concept of evolving capacities. So like, a 1-year-old child has a right to the name, but has no way of communicating anything. So that's why the parent chooses their name. But in a situation, let's say with a 13-year-old child where there is, let's say, divorce in the family and there's, a remarriage going on, then the child has the capacity maybe to say, I would like to change my name because this is the change in the family situation. So the child's capacity is evolving, and the school system hasn't changed to recognize that. And for us to have, again, a top-down authority coming and saying, okay, well, you are respecting child rights number this, and this, and you're not doing good on this, doesn't so much make sense. We should do it in a way that empowers children, supports them to defend their own rights. It also rather neatly circumvents the problem of who is going to be this authority anyway. Like UNICEF could do it, but UNICEF doesn't have funds to do this, right? And if you're doing it as a civil society entity, we can't afford to do that. I mean, UNICEF is actually charging money from schools for this, which makes it exclusionary. So the idea is more on a peer-to-peer basis. So if Riverstone in South Africa says that in order to enhance children's participatory rights, the right to be heard and things like that, these decisions are now made at the school meeting, which previously were made by the administration. Right? And let's say in Bianca's school, it's not going to be that it can change overnight to all decisions being made by children, because that would be a recipe for chaos. It would rather be that, okay, let's consider the inputs for this, let's allow them to make this. It's like not very different to the process by which Sri Lanka got independence from England. There was, it wasn't that you just suddenly got independence, there was sort of progressive decision making that was given to us, and then eventually we got independence. So that sort of transition would need to take place. But for example, for Bianca to be able to say that the reason we have the student council or the student union, and we are asking them for their inputs in how to structure the timetable, that they prefer to do this at this time and things like that, is because children have a right to be heard. And if other schools are doing much more than this, we should be able to do at least this, because that's what's practical for us. So it's a more bottom-up kind of thing we're envisioning. So that said, let me pop into the PowerPoint quickly. Okay, did my screen come through? Yep, that's okay. So I was trying to see what's in it for different stakeholder groups, and I thought we'll start with what's in it for children, right? And so in principle, all children have all rights in all situations, but in practice, it's not like that. There's always some kind of violation somewhere. So if we can change that, if we can change a school from violating a particular right to at least being neutral, or from being neutral to actively advancing it, then we are improving the rights of children. But who is saying this? Is it just me saying this? Who is this authority, right? So, well, this is what the United Nations said, I think in 2001 on the first general comment, that efforts to promote the enjoyment of other rights of the child must not be undermined and should be reinforced by the values imparted in the education process. So not only what's in the curriculum, but how the education processes are, the pedagogical methods, the environment, all of these things, and whether it's homeschoolers. And they made what I consider to be a very damning statement when they said that children do not lose their human rights by virtue of passing through school gates, because this is what is happening in many places. And children have also said this. So when they had the Youth Declaration at the Transforming Education Summit, in the preamble, they've talked about the fact that in the past, they've either been excluded, only tokenistically included in decision making, and they do not accept that. They want to be active participants and collaborators in this. And very specifically, the 8th demand in that to promote a broad and holistic view of education that is founded upon the principles of peace and human rights. So how would you know if it's founded on the principles of peace and human rights unless you actually check, well, when we do this, is it consistent with human rights? So when there's corporal punishment in schools in Sri Lanka still, is that consistent with the principles of human rights? And it isn't. Of course, saying that doesn't stop the corporal punishment straight away, but it is an argument that has been well, it's been what's central to the shift that maybe soon we will see it being maybe legal in Sri Lanka. And I also asked ChatGPT to analyze the 25 demands in the Youth Declaration against the CRC and to tell me whether it's highly aligned, medium aligned, or has low alignment. So 23 of the 25, according to ChatGPT's analysis, had a very high alignment, and 2 of them had a medium high level. Now, of course, ChatGPT is ChatGPT, but I think it's not going to be the case that there's a high degree of non-alignment. It's that there is very much good alignment. So if child rights are respected in education, then the demands that are there in the Youth Declaration will very likely be met. And for those of us coming from democratic, self-directed education kind of spaces, some of these demands seem like, but we already do this. Why are you still demanding this, right? But the benchmark in the mainstream system is such that these are still a very distant dream. And okay, so there it was children who know something about their rights, that they were able to participate in this Youth Declaration. But if you just take children generally, anybody really, if you don't know your rights, you don't know if they're being violated. So as a first step, you need to know your rights. And sometimes these violations are going to be justified that, hey, this is the only way that's possible. The only way is that you have to have this exam, or you have to have this curriculum, or you must learn this. But if they can, as there is a see that another way is possible, then they are more empowered, because they can say, well, no, this isn't the only way. You can also do it this way. These places do it this way. Why are you saying we can't do it this way? Derry also brought up this idea of student unions, and I see student unions as a very important realization of the freedom of association and the freedom of expression. But their right to be heard is often suppressed. So recently, I think it was Derry who was talking about this, that in some school, they had banned mobile phones without any consultation with the student union. So their participatory rights had just been totally ignored by the state authorities. Now, again, if student unions are able to say, well, look, but Denmark does this and Sri Lanka does this and Thailand is doing this, so why are we not doing this here in Belgium, right? So it gives them more power to leverage those rights if they have more examples from around the world that they can refer to. I think democratic schools have the most to gain, and that's why I am hopeful that at IDEC we will see more people coming on board for this. So I don't know how many of you are familiar, but Peter Hartkamp in the Netherlands had a very long drawn legal battle, very expensive. I'm not sure if there was maybe also some jail time. So if we are fighting the state, it's costing us effort, it's costing us money, it's opportunity cost. Some people are just going to be demotivated and give up on this thing. So if we can come to a place where we don't have to do that, I think it's great. The point that Arturo also brought out, if we have that endorsement or recognition by the state that, okay, these schools are doing ABCD things because they are related to the rights of the child, which we as a state have ratified, and it's really great that they're doing this. And it can also separate us from some alternative provision that is not right-centric. Like there is some fear, and maybe the fear is bigger than the real problem, but extremist ideology is being taught to children by keeping them out of the mainstream school system, and they don't integrate into the host culture and things like that. So those can be very clearly shown to be not advancing child rights or human rights, whereas the democratic school that does look at how you integrate and things like that can be shown to be right-centric. So both of these would mean that potential families would accept us better, potential staff would accept us better, and the general public would also understand us better. And For a particular school, there would also be the record of how they are walking the talk. So it's not just fancy marketing materials, but we are part of this quality assurance system. This is what we do for participatory rights. This is what we do for freedom of expression. This is what we do for association X, Y, Z. And there's some credibility. Okay, these people must really be doing this if it's part of this quality assurance system, and it's not just some marketing stuff that tell parents when they come. There's also the opportunity then for democratic schools to cooperate with the state to share good best practices. So let's say Sume in Estonia could be telling other schools, okay, this is how we co-create the timetable with students so that their voice is also heard in how we schedule these things. And this is what I said about earlier, so that if we really value democracy and human rights, we can't value it only for the children in democratic schools. We have to value it for all children. And I think we have a duty really that if somebody reaches out to us for support, that okay, you have this particular practice, can you help us with it? That we should help them. It doesn't have to be for free, but I think we should help them. And coming to a place like that would give us a lot of credibility as well. Then what's in it for the state? I think this is an area that probably Katie could add a lot to, maybe not necessarily now, but after the call even. But ratifying a treaty means the state has taken the responsibility to respect, protect, and fulfill rights. So if something is happening in a country that advances that, then it is good for the state, right? But maybe we need to somewhere in this address this concern about the collective good and social order that Katie raised. And there is a reality that schools are struggling with absenteeism and school avoidance. And if rights can help make schools places that children prefer to come to, then the investment that the state makes in public education will have better results, and you'd also reduce the number of children who are falling through the cracks. So, future unemployment benefits or healthcare costs could be less. But the state needs to, I think, in this understand that part of the reason why children are avoiding school is because their rights are not respected, and that's why they are leaving. And if we did respect their rights, then more of them would be happier to come. Or a UN agency like UNICEF. So UNICEF is established for the purpose of implementing the CRC. So anything that advances child rights should be something that UNICEF sees as further in their mandate. They have this award in UK. As far as I know, it hasn't spread to other countries. I'm not sure why. Maybe part of the problem is that schools have to pay. And then currently they're only collecting case practices within the UK, but we could be a global repository. So there's more diversity, partly because more countries, partly because we have examples coming from democratic schools. State schools also in principle are expected to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights of the child because they are part of the state. But there is a sad reality that the state usually does not move a muscle and certainly does not spend any dollars on advancing rights unless people agitate for it. So there would either need to be pressure from the public or pressure from the ministry, I think.
I have a green move. That's why network buffer.
Devans, could you get on? So for parents, well, if we can see human rights law as something that is the basis for a life of respect and dignity, and I think this is the part where Katie already has done a lot of work. So I think parents should really want to protect the rights of their children, provided that they are in a position where they're able to. And then we could have situations of parents in democratic schools. But again, if we care about child rights, we should care about the rights of every child. For people in academia or research, then this would provide a lot of material that they can use for research. Like, okay, what has happened when uniforms was removed, or we had dress down Fridays or something as part of the right to freedom of expression? Did it lead to a collapse in order in the school? Did they have to roll it back, or were they able to continue? So we would have this kind of material that researchers can use, or how did such and such school implement a student parliament or a student council or whatever they call it. So it could collect all this information that then people can research on. Private schools, I'm not too sure, but maybe it could just be to improve their profile and to say that we are the only such and such school that is part of this quality assurance system, and this is another reason why you should enroll a child with us. Debansel raised an interesting point in the chat about various ways in which some students are more marginalized than others, whether it's because of your caste or religion or gender or disability, and about token student councils. So one of the, like a comment on that is, this is really no different to the situation of adult human rights in countries. And it's just because X number of countries have ratified a treaty, it does not mean that all citizens in that country enjoy all the rights in that. In Sri Lanka, a couple of decades ago, it was very likely that if you're critical of the government, you would disappear. So things in that regard have improved quite a lot. Now you could still face unlawful arrest and a few days in jail, or in some cases maybe a bit longer, but at least you're there, you're not disappeared. And then yes, some groups are more victimized than others. And I mean, I think there's no magic bullet, except that if students have access to examples from other schools about how they're doing it better, then it allows them to demand for that. So it's not going to be easy. I don't think any battle for human rights is easy, but it can help in that situation. It's one more thing that would help them. So to Bianca's first question also, so you can refer to these. I'm not sure, are you in a state school or is it a private school?
It's a private school.
All right, okay. So unfortunately, they are not quite so much under obligation to do things for rights.
They are.
That,
They are in Germany. They are. You are not allowed. You're not getting an allowance if you're not following state. That's the biggest problem in Germany for any private school, no matter which one, even democratic schools. They struggle with what the state is prescribing them.
right. And so sometimes what the state is prescribing is not rights-based either.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. So then it becomes a question of how we can use this to argue with the state. It will be, I think, a long journey, but the more examples we have from more countries, the more pressure there will be on states to listen to this. And like we've had, if you take Summerhill, that's still running, like more than 100 years of democratic education in different parts of the world. And it hasn't been able to influence state policy in those places. I don't know, Yakov may be one example of where they have, but by and large, the state system just continues the same way. So we have not been able to communicate the benefits of what is happening in democratic schools with enough conviction. And I think part of the challenge is that if we are individual schools against the state, we are almost always going to lose. I think Summerhill was a bit fortunate, maybe because of the way UK law is. But if we are 100 schools or 500 schools and we are all talking about the same thing, and we can talk about the same thing because the convention is there for all these countries, then we have a fighting chance, I think. And so when Matilda also said that, how to help decision makers understand, hopefully from this, we will be able to say that if we take the child's right to, okay, an easy one is freedom from violence, but I'm trying to think of a better one. Okay, the right to be heard. These are all the things happening in the 75 schools that they are doing in order to advance the right to be heard. And this is how it all comes together. And so therefore, what this right says in these 3 or 4 lines in the convention, when you translate it into practice, this is what it looks like. So if we have those examples collected, we can do that. And I think in the past, people have tried to collect these things in like articles or books, but it's been, again, ad hoc efforts. Whereas here we have the opportunity of the network effect, where as we have more and more people doing it, it becomes more and more valuable for everybody doing it. So Kathy's question, I will keep it for later in terms of how we want to proceed as a group. So I think for Arturo's expectation also, this can work if we make it work. Okay, so apologies for monopolizing the conversation for so long. Let me stop talking and see what you all have to say.
I'm going to chip in now because I've only got a few more minutes during which I'll be able to talk, and then I'm just going to have to listen for the rest of the time. What's coming through to me here really strongly is I think the messaging or translation that we need to do, not just into different languages, but into different worldviews and different stakeholder interests. So, I think if we create this quality assurance system as simply as possible, using pure rights language so that it's the strongest thing it can possibly be for advocating with the state. But then I and Kathy and everybody who wants to can get on board with then kind of explaining that and translating that to different stakeholder interests and different ways of understanding and different values. Like I recently did an article for Sudbury International looking at how human rights is the same thing as self-determination theory is the same thing as Sudbury education. And obviously into that, we can also bring your concepts of well-being and empowerment and democracy and just try and create quite a nice big portfolio of different presentations of what we're doing so that people aren't looking at this very dry human rights language main document and just feeling lost. They can go to the explanation that's going to be the most useful for them and their purposes.
Thanks, Shanna. Anybody who wants to comment? I think we are small groups, so you can just unmute and speak.
Yeah, I just didn't want to interrupt, especially Jana, if you're your last chance to speak. So I think one of the things that would help maybe me, but also free schools in Germany, as I've written, it's very arbitrary. A lot of especially free schools are getting under scrutiny at the moment in Germany. So then for not fulfilling state expectations. So I was told I had a lot of contact with different schools lately in the last year. What would immensely help is if you know somebody. I mean, if you get in a talk with maybe a head teacher, no, we're not having democracy, or a state school is visited by authorities, so you know, who can I call up? I mean, the best thing would be all free schools work together, which they don't do, or I missed something in last 2 years because there was no one helping. If authorities are standing in front of you, so well, where are your results from for year 2? They are not on the level they should be. That's the that kind of things. Or can you show me what children would learn if they don't have to do whatever schedule we have fabricated for them? So I need to know who can I call up and who is standing next to me. This is something we desperately need. I don't know about the whole world, but definitely in Germany. Because I can point to read here is a study, look at this, talk to this child, go and visit this school. It doesn't work. They are not doing it.
So when countries don't have to ratify treaties, but sometimes there's peer pressure of sorts, and then they ratify it, and then they're in it. But still, if you do ratify a treaty, then it is like a promise you're making to do certain things. And one of the things we had thought in this is that if you are going to be, especially a school, but even an unschooling family, if they want to be part of this quality assurance system, they need to sign up. And there's no fee as such, but you need to make a commitment that says that me as the CEO or principal or whatever of the school is signing up to be part of this. We understand what this involves, and we promise to do our regular submissions on this to say what we are doing. So for this to fly, we need to have enough people coming on board. And if they do, and so it's not necessarily the case that, oh, this is happening to this school, let me pop over and help them necessarily, but I have still shared the things in our school that collectively could help us to face this kind of inspection, because it's not just one school saying it, but 100 or several hundred schools saying it. And it's a little bit like NATO, right? If you are not in the in-group, then you don't have the benefit of the defense of being part of that group. So if we have a critical mass of schools in this quality assurance system, then it's going to be better for the others to join than to stay out. Welcome, Max. We had a bit of a presentation that you could catch up with, I guess, after, and even Mike, I think, only managed to see part of it, but we are little bit exploring what different people need from this. The idea being that if we are clear on what different stakeholder groups need, then we can try to build it in a way that meets those needs. So thanks, Bianca, for that update on the situation with Germany and the challenges there. Matilda, Katie, Arturo, any thoughts?
I think this challenge Bianca mentioned, it's the same everywhere in Europe. I don't know about your country. And the question to me is what they have the right to prescribe. And you cannot fight the state, as you said, but you can talk to their agent. And depending on whom you are talking to, if it's an open-minded person or not, I think you can manage to find some maybe compromise or some better direction. And the story of Peter Hartkamp, I remember they managed to do it. But I agree it's not worth fighting the state. But as Gina said, you need to find the the right arguments, narrative, and to enter into their vision of the world, to find. Actually, we are probably looking for the same thing, but we are taking different paths, and they need to understand. We need to understand how they view the world and how we view the world. But the experience I made in Luxembourg, they were very open-minded because one of the person in the government was open-minded and they had some power. Then the people changed and it completely changed. Then they banned self-directed education, and before they were more kind of accepting it. So we had made huge progress, and then very suddenly it went backwards. So it really depends on the people and how you can engage in dialogue, in a constructive dialogue with them. And it's a very difficult thing to do because they don't want to engage in dialogue. So we need to find a way to communicate and to have good points against any arguments they have. So we need to understand their problems. And I think their problem is if they allow self-directed education, it becomes chaos. It becomes separatism. They don't control the society and the social cohesion anymore. So that's their main problem, I understood from all the exchange we had with them. But when they try to change or to impose something, we can argue, and then it stops the process. So they are not that powerful if you act at the source when the problem arrives. If it's already in the law and decided, it's too late. So you have to lobby all the time at the beginning, and then this is democracy. So they cannot say we cannot listen to you, but I think even if we cannot fight the state, because they have the power, that's for sure, there's a lot we can do, and the narrative we will use, the definition and the way we present things, it will be very useful. We don't know how, but I could see all the progress made in the 12 last years. Now we have a roundtable where we can freely speak about self-directed education, where the young people are criticizing or questioning, challenging the government agents in the roundtable. So it really changed a lot, and I'm sure the more we find the right words and language to present things, the more people understand what we mean and it makes sense, and then it grows. So I'm sure probably I won't see the result of what we are doing here, but I know what we will be doing will be useful in some way. So that's all I can say. But I don't hear you.
When Katie, when you say that, like you have advised in the Luxembourg families, this is how you can face an inspection. So currently that information is only there. So a family in, say, Germany doesn't have access to that, right? It may or may not work in Germany, but this information is just distributed everywhere and nobody has access to it. So although we know sort of what went on with Peter Hartkamp, again, we don't really know the details of these things and how to defend and how to convince. So even if it is only sharing these things, I think we still benefit. But I think we benefit even going beyond that. I think another aspect on this that this can help is sometimes democratic schools, in order to market themselves and attract families, have to contrast themselves with the public school system in a way that makes the public school system look not good. And then the state doesn't really like us because we are essentially shitting on them. But if we can frame it that, look, we are all trying to do the best we can in terms of implementing child rights. All of us can do better than what we are doing now. And whoever is doing something good should share it so that everybody else can make use of it. And in that sense, for example, state schools have one very strong advantage over a private democratic school in that there is no fee for the children. So that means regardless of your income level, you can participate. And from a non-discrimination aspect, that's a very good thing to have. And then, I mean, you can have a privately run school that is state funded, but without state funding, we will not have that aspect of democracy. So there are certain things that public schools are able to do well. Let's acknowledge those, and let's just see that we are all at different stages in this journey of realizing child rights, and we are all hopefully going in the same direction. So let's try to walk together and support each other in this. And taking this kind of a stance may help the state to be more cooperative, because we are not being antagonistic towards them. We are offering a way that we can work together. Arturo, Matilda, Max, you can also speak, but I'm just letting the others speak so you get a sense of where we are at.
So far, I agree. Yes. I have nothing really to add. I think, or it will not be super, it will not really enrich what has already been said, I think.
Yeah, in my situation, I'm from Mexico, and I think government works a bit different here. State schools are freer in what they can teach, and also private schools have a very open program in what to teach, and the private schools are not state funded. So private schools, I mean, that's not, that has its pros and cons, right? But at the end of the day, if you want to create a school with certain methodologies and so on, you can. The thing here is people still believe free education or self-directed education, it's a lower quality of education than traditional education. So most schools, like we do have Montessori, or the alternative traditional ones, but at the end of the day, self-directed education and this type of education that involves so many child rights and so many child decision making and free education and liberty and so on are still not a thing in Mexico. I was for the past 2 years in the United States, and there it's and I'm sure in Europe it's more progressive even. No, well, I don't know. I don't mean the whole schooling system. I'm talking about some ideas about the educational about education. That's all. In Mexico, we are very, very few people, and I mean, I know 2 other people who are striving for self-directed education, free education, or so on. Everyone else thinks we're crazy, like literally crazy. So for us, the problem it's not if it's regulated, unregulated, and so on. It's about people wanting to join, about parents or kids saying, okay, I get what, and what. That's why I found very valuable of what Gianna said about just proving in very explicit ways, like, look, this is what's been going on. I mean, in my educational center, it started in a community, in a very rural community of 200 people. In the whole community, the next community was half an hour from where we were. One of those, I mean, there were like 40 kids in the community that were joining the educational center. One of them is the national chess champion of the country of 130 million people. So it's so many, and not just that, and not just to say one example out of it's I've seen what this type of education, like, there are kids, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids that I was seeing in New York, writing like, professional guionist is the word, I don't know, like TV shows, like writing professional TV shows at 15 years old, or with medical knowledge, as my brother, he's a doctor. They were at the level of, I don't know, maybe somebody who's been in college in like 3 years, and they knew the same as them. It's something amazing what a kid, a teenager can learn when he or she wants to, So the benefits are so incredible for the people who knows them. Just for no, but sorry, so my only point is, we all know the benefits because we've been immersed in this, but nobody else is. Not state, not like regular families, and so on. So I think it's just a matter of proving what can happen if we just make these adjustments to education, and people will follow, and states will follow. I mean, it sounds very reductionist and easy, but it has so many benefits that it's crazy to think that we as humans and as a society wouldn't. That's just my point. I know maybe I'm reducting this because in Mexico could be very easy, because you just, I mean, I think creating a school in Mexico, it's easier than maybe in Europe. But yeah, that's my idea.
I'm coming to Mexico.
Yeah, right. I was thinking the same thing. Hey, I have a question for people.
Yes.
So we all agree that we know what he's talking about, right? About kids' potential. Okay, I've been asking people who I meet who also know this. How many people, how many of us are there in the world? Give me a number out of, like, say, 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 1,000,000. What do you think our population, our critical population, is at right now? Anyone want to take a guess at that?
You mean number of sort of democratic schools or number of children in there?
Critical people, right? 1 in a million?
I think less than 1 in a million.
Less 1 in a million. Yeah, I mean people who know that kids have more potential than the education system allows them to achieve.
1 in a million.
1 in a
Still.
million? Yeah, yeah.
I would say more if they want to admit it is another thing. They're in denial because it's convenient. I think most of us know the system is not working.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right,
that's true.
right. But
I think that
but a
sorry.
lot of people don't see ways, and that's what's so frustrating for me, because if you stand there and say, I know a way, which is very individual, which would open up a lot of different ways. They're just like, this bullshit. That's bollocks. That's no, that cannot work. They would stay stupid forever. And I can give you proof. And they are just not listening. And that's so frustrating. And I think especially parents, but also the state, but it starts with the parents, is they are so scared that their children will end up under the bridge. That's the picture.
Yes, yeah.
They
That's
will
exactly.
end up under the bridge. I live in Frankfurt. Directly, I told Sifan directly at the Central Railway Station. Not a very nice region, and so I have a chance to talk to a lot of people living under the bridge or on the streets. No one of them has failed school. It's not the people who fail school who end up under the bridge. Very, very few.
Interesting.
It's other people frustrated with the system who either decide, oh, I can't bear that, or are psychically injured and, oh God, I can talk more than 24 hours a day about what school is doing to our children. I see it every day, and I try to do things differently, and everybody thinks I'm crazy, but children love it. Oh, so you're so relaxed, you're so laid back. Yeah, well, you can learn whatever helps you and what is now important, because I cannot force you. What should I do? Should I beat stuff into you? It doesn't work.
Sometimes appears to work. But also to Max's question, now the number of people who are dissatisfied with mainstream education, I think, is quite large. But most of those people are thinking of solutions that basically involve throwing more money at the thing. So like if we had smaller class sizes, if we had computers for everybody, if we had this for everybody and that for everybody, but it's still the same coercive system that does not respect the rights of the child. It's just you are in a more comfortable place while your rights are being disrespected. So it's not under the bridge, but you're in a camp or something like that. It's little bit nicer, but still your rights are not respected. The number of people who are keen on environments that do respect child rights. So we have a bunch of people in the sort of human rights space who don't know of democratic schools. And then you have a bunch of us in democratic schools who are not able to express what they do in terms of human rights. So then those two parties can't connect with each other. So there is a challenge there. There is also, so I think this is a bit of an unfortunate reality of how these things work. When there is something that is problematic, so let's say coercive education, the counter that emerges to that can be diametrically opposite to. So from coercive education, we go to completely self-directed education where the individual is free to do anything they want, choose anything they want, or at least that's how it's perceived. And this, because it's the opposite of what people are currently used to, it's too scary for people to get on board. And also the choice they're being offered is to make this jump into entirely self-directed thing. And that's too much of a leap. It's a sort of same kind of challenge when Copernicus was presenting the heliocentric view of the solar system. So people had to go from thinking everything went around the Earth, which was what they were also being told by the church and things, to the idea that everything in the solar system went around the sun. There was no in between. You can't have it like orbiting Venus and then orbiting Mercury and then to the sun. It's one big jump, and it was not easy. So going from coercive to self-directed is not an easy thing for people to accept, and more so. So the US is a very individualistic culture, and I think that's where the term self-directed education came. And in more collective cultures, like is the case in Mexico and Sri Lanka, and to a lesser degree continental Europe, this term is not quite so well accepted. And I think if we want to bring mainstream schools closer to what we call self-directed, then there have to be smaller stepping stones that they can get there. So for example, Suime, where they still have to follow the curriculum, but they have certain amounts of freedom, is a good stepping stone. There is idea of 20% time for what children decide. So 80% of your time you're still in a directed space is another one. What Deban shared, like, can we do this self-direction for non-academic things, is another one. And so rather than presenting ourselves as being diametrically opposite to the mainstream, if we say, look, the whole point of education is to realize human rights and we have to respect human rights in it, and all of us are doing the same thing. It's just that some of us have the opportunity to do this better because we started explicitly in that way, but it's the journey that the public school system has to come, needs to come. It's not a polar opposite. So presenting it in this way, and so while there's the greatest benefit for democratic schools in being in this quality assurance system, we need to have some public schools also in this, because that will give us credibility that this is not just some fringe movement, but mainstream schools are part of it. Kat, sorry, you had raised your hand.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, after listening to you and the people, actually, what is missing also, if you give some standards, is to give tools to, not to assess. I don't like assessment, but administrative people, they want to assess and they want to see progress, and they don't know how to assess self-directed learning. And we need to help them finding criteria or hints to see there is progress, or that not necessarily there is progress, but that the environment was enabling learning and everything was provided to give access to education in the sense of being able to learn. And that would be probably very essential to support implementing self-directed education, because I found only one research study with some ideas on it, but you are in schools, maybe you have lots of criteria you could list to to help them see there's something going on, even if you cannot measure linearly like you do in school or with the same criteria, because they have to shift their world of assessment to this new reality. So this would go together with setting the standards. How can we be sure it's working? And because you speak a lot of fear, it's really about fear and be scared. And human rights are there to enable to stop fear and ignorance, but you cannot do anything against fear and uncertainties. It's human as well.
Max, yeah, sorry, I was going to ask you whether you wanted to, like, you asked a question, and I guess there was some place you wanted to go with that. So,
actually, just listening to you talk, I had some couple points. So yeah, what I work on is that concept that there shouldn't be one system. Okay, putting kids for extended hours in the same room, same person is the wrong approach, right? There should be a diversity of approaches. And so I offer that diversity, right? I build full freedom learning facilities for kids, right? They're in there, they are fully responsible for everything they do, right? So it's just, I tell people, parents, educators, you just got to give them at least 4 hours a week of just this, right? Because it exercises their brain in a whole new way, right? It ramps up their executive functions. And I find that too, just those few hours a week have outside implications. Like kids will carry that to home, they'll carry it to school. It's just a matter of changing their mindset from obedience-based education to responsibility-based. That's all I wanted to add, yeah.
So I think this is also an example of working with the system, making a small change that is somewhat palatable to people, and then it moves the needle. And I mean, we may not be happy with the outcome of this 5 years or 10 years down the line, but then in 5 or 10 years down the line, this program would have also improved into its next iteration, right? So it's an ongoing thing. So I think a general sense, like even from Devan's comment earlier and what Max just shared, is that we need a diversity of ways for people to come on board. So whether they are already a democratic school or a free school, or whether they're a state school or a private school, this system has to welcome everybody and has to offer something to everybody. And I think what Kathy again highlighted was that if we are taking this approach that we want to cooperate with the state on this, then there are going to be concerns that are going to come, and we maybe need to empathize, let's say, that they are in a difficult place, right? Because they are accountable to certain parameters that maybe they didn't set. And how do we find partners with them and help us, kind of a thing. So just being also mindful of the time, I think we've expanded around and got some fairly good sense of what we want to end up with in a abstract sense, not the sort of specifics of how are we going to do X, like, how are people going to submit these things, how are people going to sign up for things. Initially, I thought that was the bigger part of the work that we had ahead of us. But now I'm thinking that that part is relatively the easier part to do, but dealing with these things like, how the reality in Mexico is different from the reality in England, and is different from Germany. And how do we deal with the inspector who just wants to know, can they pass the grade 3 exam or things like that? These are maybe the areas that we need to work more on. One thing I was also thinking is that the meetings would be a place for us to touch base and kind of connect and keep the momentum, but that we would do some, I don't know, writing, research, brainstorming in between times. Also because finding a meeting time that works for everybody isn't easy either. So I got the signal numbers for some of you, not for all of you. So just send a reminder on that and try to coordinate on signal when we will next meet. But what kind of things do you think we should be working on till the next meeting? And then let's see how we can kind of organize ourselves around that.
I think we can just bring the arguments that I mean, we all had very good points about many different topics. I think we just we can bring the arguments for them, do some research, gather some I mean, because we all work in this stuff, right? So just gather the information of what we have achieved, communicated, you know, the talking with the state or the agents or the parents or whichever, and just let's say I suggest that the next meeting would be yeah, with argument based on our experience, and I think that can be a very helpful step, you know, further to what we talked today.
Just to clarify, if I got you correctly, when you say argument based, so like to be able to say that when the inspector asks us this kind of question, this is how we respond in terms of such and such articles in the Convention of the Rights of the Child, or was it something else?
Yeah, I don't know if argument based is the correct use of the word. On your experience, what had happened with that's the argument that I'm referring to. I don't know if it's a correct word.
Okay, so to understand better the kind of challenges we have experienced when dealing with the state or dealing with the public, so we then have a clearer idea that this quality assurance system should help us deal with these kind of things.
Exactly. So
I
we
have
can build towards that.
Depending on when we meet next time, I might have a very practical approach. But yeah, I know it's probably too short. But I think it's end of this week. There is a meeting in our school. A second one, first one I couldn't attend. It's exactly because there is a lot of change going on, and there will be a lot of change next school year. So they invite everybody, parents, children, teachers, to talk about how do we want our school to change, and everybody can participate. La la la. So if you have ideas, what I can give them, especially the parents, to like, okay, what about getting children more self-determination in this school for next year, and what they need, and how, well, I know a lot of things, how we can get that into reality, because a lot of things are very easy. So, but what can I say? What arguments would you make? If I'm thinking about, well, the leaderboard to give me a half an hour of talk. So, but I'm pretty sure what I'm going to say, but what would be nice to get your input. What would you say? What has to change and how? So just an idea. You should all have my email if you have an idea.
Just to quickly put this in the chat also, but self-determination, self-directed, these are terms that are difficult to sell, and these terms don't exist in the rights discourse as those terms, right? So in the rights discourse, what we have is the right to be heard and the concept of evolving capacity. And if we say that, you know, when we say that, okay, Germany ratified this treaty in this year, article this of this treaty says this, and article this says this, people are a little bit overawed, but at least they're like, okay, this person seems to know what they're talking about because they're referring this into a number and things like that, right? And I recently found a video, this actually by a professor who's very much an expert in this evolving capacities concept, and this was from February this year. So I would suggest to watch that and get some ideas on what is meant by the term evolving capacity is, because so like if you bring the terminology into democratic schools, I think it can help allay some of the fears that people have, because people are like, no, but how can you let children self-determine this? Even I as an adult can't determine this myself, kind of things. But evolving capacities gives us a sort of handle to get into that.
Could you send a link?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat now also.
I think it's difficult to answer you, Bianca, because I don't know what your school you look like, with whom you have to deal, and I would try to understand what are their fears and work on their fears.
I know the fears.
You know, so then you should know how to reassure them. And I like the idea of max of 4 hours, like self-determined time, or like the 20% concept, this kind of thing.
That's why I suggested already. I have already suggested a concept like Tallinn, like Suvime. I've already suggested it, and it was like, no, we cannot do that. And my when I ask why, yeah, because we are a grammar school. So what? So what? That's just yeah. Anyway, I will watch the video, and if you have any ideas on top, but this right to be heard, that's good, referring to human rights. Usually you use a lot of other stuff, but I will watch it.
One of the ways that I think is the most effective to convincing adults of this is they have to see it in action, and they have to see the growth in the kids. When the growth in the kids occurs, it catches them off guard, and they're like, whoa, there's something here, right? That's been the most effective strategy that I found.
Yep, that's true. Thanks, because then I know what I have to refer to, and I have some witnesses who were in my classroom if it was very self-determined.
And get some kids together, tell them, hey, you guys want more self-directed learning? Then you need to present something to the adults so the adults see your capability and your desire to do it. Bring them to the meeting and let them speak.
Yeah.
There is, I think, another challenge to be aware of. So the way teacher development happens in Sri Lanka, and I think this is probably similar in many parts of the world because I've seen this sort of sense from people in different degrees, is that teachers feel like they are the saviors, right? Because these children are too weak, too incapable of doing things by themselves. And that's why I have to come in and be the savior and sort of lead them to the promised land. And if kids are going to be self-determining their things and directing their things, then am I needed anymore? Am I special anymore? Right? What is the point of me doing bachelor's of education degree and a master's of education degree? What is my role here anymore? So this and this is not something that people are going to speak out about and say, I feel threatened by this. What is my future going to be if we implement these things? And it's very hard to deal with fears that people don't voice because we don't know what they are, right? So on one hand, like I think for Max's thing, parents are very happy when they see children doing well because parents want children. But teachers can feel insecure when children do well through some pathway that didn't depend on them, right? So it can be very threatening there. So that's I think the only way to tackle that is to keep the changes small and to keep the changes like non-threatening. We're not sort of like, so if you have coercive versus self-directed, then anybody in that coercive system is automatically like a bad person, right? And they are going to find it difficult to start the switch. But if we just say something like, look, me and you both, we want what is best for children. Sometimes we are at loggerheads with children because we are not respecting enough their evolving capacity. They need us to step back a little bit. They need us to listen to what they say, which is the right to be heard. So you're still doing the same thing. You're still going to be a good teacher, but you just need to loosen the reins a bit. So something like that maybe will be less threatening. So sometimes there's
that's right.
diplomacy.
I tell teachers, you have to switch from teachers to facilitators. It is much more rewarding being a facilitator than a teacher, right? It feels fantastic when you can let go and all that responsibility you give to the kids and they flourish. It's just like, wow, it feels so much better than having to force kids to learn things, right? And so that's something that you got to get across to teachers, you know?
Guys, I have to go, guys and girls. I really have to go. My husband is waiting. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So Arturo had an idea in terms of what we would do till the next meeting in terms of kind of documenting some of these challenges we face. We are now down to 4 people and Diana is not able to speak also. Any suggestions, Katie or Max, from what we would do from now till the next meeting?
No, I shared the link to our website where we publish. Well, you can find our arguments there, but you know, it's it doesn't solve anything.
Right.
Can be
But
inspired.
I think it's hopefully also going to be the case that it's not just one organization in Luxembourg that is saying this, but so many places in so many parts of the world that is saying this. That is something that gives us credibility.
Mm.
So what we do in this quality assurance system might not be hugely different to what you are already doing. It's just that there's more of us doing it, and we have a reason to come together to do it because we all benefit from doing it. Okay, so let me put together this recording and try to summarize some key things. But I think even the understanding that we need to work on the marketing and promotion and sort of onboarding people to this as more crucially than the technicalities of how this is going to work, I think is a good realization. I'm glad that happened in June rather than in August at the IDEC.
Mm.
Okay,
I
so
would
thanks.
go in the direction of Gina planning what we want to communicate in which simple way. So I think maybe we should discuss this, what is necessary and urgent to communicate and how, and I don't know, have some plans in that direction. I think the contribution of Max was very empirical. You know, the people who are in schools, they have much to say on this. They have the experience with people. I am more on the theoretical level, on the rights level, so I have the rights argument, but not. I can help define the rights, but that's all. You know.
Well, I think that hopefully will be the value of the diversity in the team. So some of us are going to be more comfortable with articulating this in rights language. Some of us are going to be more comfortable in explaining it in a way that parents understand. And if you manage to put all these skill sets together and address the concerns of the different stakeholders, then maybe we'll be onto something. So right, let me end now, and I will share the recording once it's available with everybody. And let's try to decide on email, on Signal, what we will do till and at the next meeting. I think we have achieved some clarity, so I'm pleased.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, sounds good to me.
All right, thanks, Max.
We'll see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.